Top 10 recent archaeological discoveries that are rewriting everything we know about human history. What would happen if, one day, everything we believe to be true about history was overturned by new archaeological discoveries? What if an unmarked tomb, a long-buried gateway, or even a tiny creature frozen for 30,000 years could force scientists to rewrite chapters of history that were once considered unquestionable? Even more unsettling is the fact that some mysteries, despite being excavated and examined using the most advanced technology available, still have no definitive explanation. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Ancient History. My friends, history is not a book that has already been closed. It's more like a vast labyrinth. Every archaeological excavation opens another door, bringing us closer to civilizations that disappeared thousands, or even tens of thousands, of years ago. Some discoveries have left archaeologists astonished because they completely contradict what humanity once believed. Some tombs reveal burial rituals that have never been documented in any historical record. Some artifacts bear the unmistakable influence of multiple cultures, proving that ancient peoples interacted across far greater distances than we ever imagined. And then there are creatures preserved almost perfectly for tens of thousands of years, as if time itself had stood still. In today's video, we'll explore 10 archaeological discoveries that shook the scientific community and forced researchers to rethink some of the most important chapters in human history. Each discovery is another piece of an extraordinary puzzle, and each story contains details that will make you wonder, have we truly uncovered the full story of our own past, or have we only just begun to scratch the surface? Are you ready to join me on this incredible journey of discovery? If so, let's get started. The 2,000-year-old meridian statue found in a Chinese tomb that shocked the medical world. Do you believe that more than 2,000 years ago, ancient people possessed knowledge about the human body that scientists are still studying today? And what if I told you that an ordinary construction site in China accidentally revealed a secret that could change the way we view the history of traditional medicine? Would you believe it? It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? Yet that is exactly the reality that archaeologists have brought to light in recent years. The story began in 2012 in Chengdu, Sichuan Province, China. At the time, local authorities launched a maintenance project on Metro Line 3 as part of an urban renewal initiative. No one could have imagined that beneath the seemingly familiar layers of soil lay a secret that had remained hidden for thousands of years. While workers were carrying out construction activities in the Laoguanshan area, near the Military Region General Hospital, their equipment unexpectedly struck unusual traces beneath the ground. The entire construction site was immediately shut down. Experts from the Sichuan Provincial Institute of Archaeology were dispatched to conduct an emergency rescue excavation. As layer after layer of earth was carefully removed, the team uncovered a mysterious ancient tomb. But what astonished everyone was not merely the tomb itself. It was the extraordinary artifacts hidden inside. Among the many objects commonly found in ancient burials, archaeologists discovered two highly unusual items. The first consisted of bamboo slips containing records of ancient medical knowledge. The second was a small lacquered stone human figurine that concealed astonishing secrets about the human body. These two artifacts sent shockwaves through the community of researchers studying traditional Chinese medicine and helped elevate the Laoguanshan excavation site to become one of China's 10 most important archaeological discoveries. The remarkable figurine stands only about 5.5 inches tall, yet it was crafted with extraordinary precision. It features fully formed limbs, clearly defined facial features, and most notably, a series of white lines running across its body. At first, these lines puzzled researchers. However, the more closely they examined them, the more they realized that they were not ordinary decorative patterns. The figurine's body contains markings indicating the locations of major organs such as the heart, lungs, kidneys, and pelvis. Even more intriguing, the 29 white lines painted on the figure bear a striking resemblance to the meridian system described in traditional Chinese medicine. 3 of these lines encircle the chest and abdomen in concentric patterns. Another line running below the navel closely matches descriptions found in the famous ancient medical text Nanjing, the classic of difficult issues. A reversed U-shaped line stretching across the chest and abdomen remains a mystery that scholars continue to debate today. Meanwhile, a straight line running down the center of the body closely resembles the Ren meridian described in ancient Chinese medical literature. Perhaps the most astonishing aspect lies in the remaining 24 white lines. Their distribution closely mirrors the system of the 12 meridians described in the ancient medical work Lingshu, Spiritual Pivot. This discovery suggests that more than 2 millennia ago, ancient physicians may have developed a far more complete theory of meridians than previously believed. So how could people who lived thousands of years before us have understood the human body in such remarkable detail? Was this tiny figurine merely an educational model used for teaching ancient medicine? Or is it evidence that Eastern medicine had reached a level of sophistication far beyond what history has traditionally acknowledged? These questions remain unanswered. Yet one fact cannot be denied. The deeper researchers delve into this excavation, the more secrets they uncover. Each new discovery challenges long-held assumptions and forces scholars to reconsider the origins of meridian theory from the very beginning. The Laoguanshan figurine may be small in size, but its implications could reshape our understanding of ancient medical knowledge and the history of human anatomy itself. The skeletons who embraced each other for 6,000 years revealed an ancient love story that moved the world. Just imagine this for a moment. What would you think if archaeologists dug deep into the earth and discovered two people who had been lying in each other's arms for 6,000 years? Would you see it as a touching love story, an untold tragedy, or perhaps a secret that history had buried for thousands of years? As for me, I believe it must have been a love so powerful that it still brings tears to our eyes long after their deaths. The evidence comes from a remarkable discovery made in 2007 in the small village of Valdaro, near the Lombardy region of northern Italy. While archaeologists were excavating an ancient burial site there, they unexpectedly uncovered a scene that left everyone stunned. Beneath layers of earth that had remained undisturbed for thousands of years lay two skeletons buried in an extraordinarily unusual position. They were facing one another, their arms wrapped tightly around each other as if they never wanted to be apart. The moment these skeletons were brought into the light, international media outlets immediately took notice. Photographs of the rare discovery quickly spread around the world. Soon people began referring to them by an emotional nickname, the Lovers of Valdaro. But what makes this discovery truly remarkable is not just the unusual burial position. When experts dated the grave, they found that it was approximately 6,000 years old. That means this couple had been lying side by side long before the Egyptian pyramids were built and even before many of the famous civilizations of history had emerged. The story becomes even more fascinating. Further research revealed that the remains belonged to a man and a woman. Both died when they were only in their early 20s. They were still very young, at what many would consider the prime of their lives. Because they were buried in such an affectionate embrace, many researchers believe they may have been genuine lovers. Does this scene remind you of anything? For many people, the image of two skeletons embracing each other for thousands of years immediately brings to mind the story of Romeo and Juliet, the famous lovers from the works of Shakespeare, a love that overcame every obstacle, even death itself. But was the story of the Valdaro couple really that romantic? Interestingly, when experts carefully examined the skeletons, they found no evidence suggesting that the pair had taken their own lives. As a result, the theory of a lover's suicide has largely been ruled out. Instead, scientists believe the two individuals may have died at different times or as the result of some unknown event before eventually being buried together in this extraordinary grave. Subsequent discoveries only deepen the mystery. Researchers determined that both individuals stood about 5 feet 2 inches tall. In the man's remains, they found an arrow still lodged near the spinal area. Meanwhile, the woman showed signs of an arrow wound to the head. These details raised a flood of questions. Were they victims of a conflict, a sudden attack, or did they face some terrible tragedy together 6,000 years ago? According to scientists, the area surrounding Valdaro was once a vast marshland at the time of their deaths. The unique environmental conditions helped preserve the skeletons in an almost intact state for thousands of years. Yet, ironically, those same conditions failed to leave behind many clues about their actual lives or the reason they were buried in such a remarkable position. Today, the Lovers of Valdaro are displayed in a glass case at the Mantua Archaeological Museum. Every year, thousands of visitors come to see these famous remains. Yet despite countless scientific studies, one question remains unanswered. Who were they really? What happened to them 6,000 years ago? And why did the people of their time choose to place them in each other's arms, as if they wanted to preserve an eternal love story for future generations? Perhaps it is these unanswered mysteries that make the lovers of Valdaro one of the most moving and unusual archaeological discoveries ever found in human history. What do you think? Do you see this as a timeless love story, or do you have a different theory about what happened to them? If so, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Let's discuss this fascinating mystery together. 5,000-year-old skeleton with a crushed skull, found inside a kiln, reveals evidence of a bloody human sacrifice ritual. Have you ever wondered what the strangest thing archaeologists could find inside an ancient kiln might be? Perhaps broken pottery fragments, ashes, or traces of meals eaten thousands of years ago. But in a small village in central Germany, a shocking discovery has forced archaeologists to ask a whole new set of questions about the mysterious rituals of prehistoric people. The story began when construction workers were installing a power line in the village of Gerstowitz. At first, it seemed like an ordinary construction project, no different from countless others. However, while digging, they unexpectedly uncovered ancient traces buried deep beneath the ground. Realizing that the area might contain important archaeological remains, construction was immediately halted so that experts could conduct a proper investigation. As the excavation got underway, archaeologists quickly realized they were looking at a burial site belonging to the corded ware culture, a prehistoric culture that flourished across much of northern Europe from the late Neolithic period to the early Bronze Age, roughly between 2900 and 2050 BC. The people of this culture are best known for their pottery decorated with distinctive cord-like patterns created by pressing twisted cords into wet clay before firing it. However, what astonished researchers was not the age of the grave or its cultural affiliation, but the highly unusual location of the burial itself. Instead of being buried in a grave dug into the ground or beneath an earthen mound, as was common practice at the time, this man had been placed inside an abandoned kiln. That's right, a real kiln. According to experts, the kiln was a pit dug into the ground that had once been used for burning wood, preparing food, or firing pottery. Throughout decades of archaeological research, discovering artifacts or human remains inside such kilns has been extraordinarily rare. For that reason, archaeologists knew from the very beginning that they were facing a unique mystery. As they continued analyzing the skeleton, researchers determined that it belonged to a man who was about 25 years old when he died. His body had been placed in a crouched position, facing south. At first glance, this posture was not unusual for corded ware burial customs. However, the fact that he had been buried inside a kiln was completely outside the norm. Then another disturbing detail came to light. The man's skull showed signs of severe trauma. Cracks and injuries on his head suggested that he may have experienced a violent event before his death. This discovery opened the door to a series of theories that continue to fuel debate among researchers. The first theory suggests that the man may have been murdered. The skull injuries could have been caused by a weapon or an intentional act of violence. If that is true, this could represent evidence of a homicide that occurred nearly 5,000 years ago. A second theory proposes that he may have been a casualty of a Bronze Age conflict. During a time when tribes frequently competed for territory and resources, bloody clashes were entirely possible. The wound to his head may have been the result of a battle he was unfortunate enough to lose. But it is the third theory that many people find the most chilling. Archaeologists suspect that this man may have been a human sacrifice in an ancient religious ritual. Among them is archaeologist Oliver Dietrich of the Saxony-Anhalt State Office for Heritage Management and Archaeology, who noted that in a few rare cases, corded ware period kilns have been found containing cattle bones or dog bones. These animal remains are believed to have been offerings presented to mysterious deities about whom we still know very little today. But if animals were once used as sacrificial offerings, could this young man have been a special offering to the gods? That question remains unanswered. Scientists say that future laboratory analyses may help reveal the identity of this mysterious man, as well as the true reason he was placed inside the kiln nearly 5 millennia ago. Until then, we can only wait and see what the evidence ultimately reveals. The mysterious treasure. Hidden inside a 1,000-year-old medieval noblewoman's tomb in the Sayan Mountains. Have you ever noticed that some of the greatest archaeological discoveries often emerge from the most unexpected places? A modern railway project, excavators working in a remote mountain region, and then suddenly, A doorway to a world that existed more than 1,000 years ago is opened. That is exactly what happened in early 2014, when archaeologists conducted a rescue excavation ahead of the construction of a railway line through the Sayan Mountains. The Sayan Mountains are a vast mountain range located in southern Siberia, stretching across southeastern Russia and northern Mongolia. During their survey, researchers uncovered dozens of burial sites and several ancient settlements dating to different centuries. However, among the many archaeological remains, one particular burial mound immediately captured the experts' attention. The mound was surrounded by large stones arranged in a circular pattern, as if the people of the past had intentionally marked it as the resting place of someone extremely important. Once the excavation began, archaeologists quickly realized that this was no ordinary grave. Inside were the remains of a woman who was about 40 years old at the time of her death. But she was not buried alone. Also found in the tomb were the remains of an infant, the backbone of a sheep, and the skull, limbs, and hide of a horse. Why would a woman be buried alongside such unusual items? That question took researchers more than a decade to answer. According to experts, the burial represents an exceptionally rare funerary practice of medieval nomadic communities from the Eurasian steppes. The uniqueness of the grave, combined with the large number of artifacts it contained, meant that preservation, research, and analysis continued for more than 10 years. Only after a series of detailed examinations were completed were the findings finally published in the journal Bulletin of Novosibirsk State University, History and Philology. And the more scientists studied the site, the more astonishing discoveries they made. The woman was not buried with many personal belongings. Beside her were only a pair of gilded bronze earrings, an iron knife, a stone spindle whorl used for hand-spinning wool, and fragments of a mirror that had been deliberately broken as part of the burial ritual. At first glance, these objects may seem modest, yet the mirror, in particular, revealed a much larger story. Its surface was decorated with intricate vine patterns and clusters of grapes. What makes this remarkable is that such decorative motifs were typically found only on mirrors belonging to the elite classes of China's Tang dynasty, which lasted from AD 618 to 907. This suggests that the people living in this remote steppe region may have been connected to extensive trade networks linking multiple Asian civilizations. But the mystery did not end there. Among the dozens of horse-related artifacts discovered in the tomb, researchers paid special attention to a pair of stirrups. One of them was crafted in an artistic style that clearly reflected Chinese influence while also incorporating elements of Indian and Persian art. In other words, a single small artifact provides evidence of cultural exchange spanning thousands of miles nearly a millennium ago. According to the traditions of nomadic peoples of that era, a ceremonial stirrup was often placed in the most visible position beside the deceased. This indicates that horses were not merely a means of transportation, but also held deep spiritual significance within their worldview. Although radiocarbon dating could only determine that the tomb dated somewhere between the 9th and 13th centuries, researchers believe, based on the styles of the artifacts discovered, that the woman and the infant were most likely buried around the 10th century. The large collection of valuable objects originating from different cultures led experts to a striking conclusion. The woman was likely a member of the highest level of nobility in her society. However, it is also likely that she did not personally use many of these items during her lifetime. Instead, they may have been placed in the tomb by her family and clan as symbols of status, power, and respect for the deceased. Even today, this mysterious grave hidden within the Sayan Mountains continues to fascinate archaeologists. Every artifact recovered from the site tells not only the story of a woman who lived more than 1,000 years ago, but also reveals a vast network of cultural exchange that once connected distant regions of Asia in ways few people would have ever imagined. The Qilin-shaped bronze vessel, found in an ancient Chinese cave tomb that rewrote history. Who would have thought that a fox damaging crops could lead to a groundbreaking archaeological discovery? It sounds like the plot of a story, doesn't it? Yet this remarkable event actually happened in Guangxi Province, China. Here's what happened. On an unknown date that was never precisely recorded, a farmer named Chen Pansong and several villagers set out to drive away a fox that had been repeatedly damaging their fields and gardens. They ventured deep into the hills near their village, an area filled with caves that few people ever visited. At first, everyone assumed it would be an ordinary trip. They would look for signs of the animal, chase it away, and then return home. But do you know what happened next? They never found the fox. Instead, they accidentally stepped into an entirely different world, a cave filled with ancient remains that had been hidden for thousands of years. As soon as their lights illuminated the interior, the group noticed bronze objects scattered beneath layers of soil and rock. Initially, they assumed the items were simply old pieces of discarded metal, but the more closely they examined them, the more they realized these were no ordinary objects. Archaeologists were soon called to the site, and an official excavation began. The results left everyone stunned. Experts determined that the cave was actually a tomb dating back to the Warring States period, one of the most turbulent eras in Chinese history. A total of 33 artifacts were recovered from the burial site, and remarkably, every one of them was classified as a rare cultural relic of Grade 2 significance or higher. Yet among all the discoveries, one object in particular caused researchers to pause and study it with extraordinary care. It was a highly unusual bronze wine vessel. The vessel stands approximately 21.1 inches tall, measures 9.3 inches wide, 19.7 inches long, and weighs about 47.4 pounds. Its size alone suggests that it was far more than an ordinary household item. Its body is rounded, solid, and imposing, conveying a sense of strength and authority. The four supporting legs beneath it are sturdy yet remarkably lifelike, making the vessel appear less like a container and more like a living creature. After extensive study, experts reached a conclusion. The artifact was a bronze vessel shaped like a Qilin. At this point, many of you may be wondering, the Qilin is often imagined as a majestic mythical creature, part dragon and part beast, soaring through the clouds. So why would a Qilin-shaped vessel appear in a Warring States tomb? In reality, the ancient concept of the Qilin was quite different from the image commonly portrayed in modern movies and television. Ancient records describe the original Qilin as a very unusual creature. It was said to have the body of a sheep, the limbs of an ox, the mouth of a horse, and even antlers resembling those of a deer. Rather than being a fixed image, it was a combination of several familiar animals. Because of its extraordinary nature, ancient people regarded the Qilin as a sacred creature that brought good fortune and favorable omens. They believed that wherever a Qilin appeared, disasters would be driven away and prosperity would follow. Historical records even suggest that Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty used the image of the Qilin in naming one of his reign eras as a way of expressing reverence for this legendary creature. But as you can see, the image of the Qilin did not remain unchanged over time. Across successive dynasties, it was embellished, reinterpreted, and reimagined. Through this gradual evolution, the Qilin eventually became the magnificent, majestic creature soaring among the clouds that we commonly recognize today. That is why the Qilin-shaped bronze vessel, discovered in a cave in Guangxi, is much more than an ancient artifact. It is like a missing piece of a historical puzzle, helping us better understand how people of the past viewed the world, how they expressed their hopes and beliefs, and how they transformed their imagination into enduring mythical symbols. More than 100 unique game boards discovered in the ancient Greek ruins of Libya. Have you ever thought that a simple game like tic-tac-toe might have existed more than 1,000 years ago, and that people actually carved game boards directly into stone, leaving them behind for us to discover today? It may sound unbelievable, but in what is now modern-day Libya, an archaeological discovery has prompted researchers to rethink how ancient people entertained themselves and spent their daily lives. The story begins at the ruins of the ancient city of Ptolemais, a Greek archaeological site located in North Africa in present-day Libya. The discovery was made during a modern archaeological excavation aimed at re-examining the entire ancient urban settlement, which was once an important center of Hellenistic civilization. Then, while surveying the surviving stone structures, archaeologists came across something truly unexpected. Carved into the surfaces of stone slabs, city walls, and even hidden corners of ancient buildings were countless square grids etched directly into the rock. At first, some researchers believed they were nothing more than random markings or the result of centuries of weathering. But upon closer examination, they realized these were actually ancient game boards. And not just a handful, more than 100 different game boards were discovered scattered throughout the archaeological site. Imagine that for a moment. An ancient city abandoned for thousands of years, yet its stone walls still bear the marks of games once played there. The discovery fascinated researchers because it offered an entirely new perspective on the everyday lives of ordinary people in the ancient world. According to experts, these carved boards were likely used for games similar to tic-tac-toe or other simple strategy games. What's especially interesting is that they weren't made as separate gaming tables. Instead, they were carved directly into existing architectural structures, suggesting that these games were a common form of entertainment woven into everyday life. Archaeologist Zofia Kowarska pointed out another remarkable detail. In some locations, researchers found dozens of game boards clustered together, sometimes as many as 20 or 30 boards within a relatively small area. This suggests that these places once served as popular gathering spots where people worked, rested, and played games together. Can you picture the scene? Not kings or famous warriors, but ordinary shepherds sitting on large stone slabs, watching over their flocks of goats and sheep as they grazed, while passing the time with a few friendly games. The countryside surrounding Ptolemais consisted of vast grasslands that were ideal for livestock grazing. Because of this, many researchers believe that shepherds themselves carved many of these game boards. From elevated stone outcrops, they could easily keep an eye on their animals while enjoying simple games that still required strategy and skill. According to UNESCO records, Ptolemais was founded in the 7th century BC as a Greek settlement. It later flourished during the Hellenistic period under the rule of the Ptolemaic pharaohs, who inherited power after the reign of Alexander the Great. During its peak, the city featured an impressive network of architecture, including defensive walls, public bathhouses, residential districts, and numerous buildings reflecting classical Greek design. But the city's story did not end there. In the 7th century AD, Ptolemais suffered severe destruction during the Arab conquest and gradually faded into obscurity. That is precisely what makes these stone-carved game boards so extraordinary. They are far more than traces of ancient games. They are vivid evidence of everyday human life in a city that once flourished before disappearing into the pages of history. So, what do you think? When standing before more than 100 ancient game boards that have survived to the present day, do you believe we truly understand how people lived in the ancient world? Or are there still countless ordinary moments lying hidden beneath layers of dust and time, waiting to be uncovered? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The 2,700-year-old remains of a woman buried beside a mule in Spain reveal a ritual that has yet to be deciphered. You know, the world of archaeology is full of fascinating discoveries. Some finds become even more puzzling the closer researchers examine them. It's as if everything is somehow out of sync with what we've always believed about the past. And the story from the archaeological site of Hort den Grimaud in northeastern Spain is one of those remarkable cases. Back in 1986, when archaeologists first excavated the site, they uncovered an ancient stone pit among the remains of an old settlement. At first, it attracted little attention because it appeared to be nothing more than an abandoned grain storage pit. But decades later, when modern analytical techniques were finally applied, its true secret began to emerge. And what researchers discovered stopped them in their tracks. Inside what seemed to be an ordinary stone pit were the remains of a young woman and a mule buried together approximately 2,700 years ago. You heard that correctly, a human being and a mule laid to rest in the same burial. The woman was estimated to have been between 20 and 25 years old at the time of her death. However, unlike the remains found in a typical burial, her body was not intact. According to specialists, part of her body had been cremated before being placed in the burial pit, leaving her skeleton highly fragmented. As a result, determining the exact cause of her death has proven to be an extremely difficult challenge for scientists. Yet what makes this discovery even stranger is the unusual companion buried beside her, the mule. A mule is neither a horse nor a donkey, but a hybrid produced by breeding the two species. In the ancient world, mules were far more than ordinary livestock. They were highly prized means of transportation because they combined the strength of a horse with the remarkable endurance and resilience of a donkey. In this case, the mule was clearly not buried there by chance. Analysis of its bones revealed that it had been fed a grain-rich diet provided by humans. Even more importantly, evidence suggests that it was primarily used for riding. This indicates that it was not an ordinary working animal, but a valuable possession in the society of its time. But the biggest question still remains: why was it buried in the same grave as the young woman? To answer that question, researchers have explored numerous theories. In many ancient cultures, burying horses or other animals alongside humans often carried symbolic meaning, especially in connection with warriors or members of the nobility. Yet this was not a war horse, it was a mule, making the burial all the more unusual and difficult to explain. Could this represent a unique funerary ritual that has never before been documented? Did the mule hold a special symbolic significance within this ancient community? Or could it simply be evidence of a burial tradition that disappeared and was forgotten over time? The mystery doesn't end there. Around 2,700 years ago, this region was influenced by several cultures that interacted extensively with one another, including the Phoenicians, who were renowned for their seafaring skills and vast trading networks throughout the Mediterranean. This has led some researchers to suggest that the mule may not have been merely a local animal, but rather the product of a widespread network of trade, breeding, and shared knowledge that stretched across the Mediterranean world. Yet despite all these theories, the mystery remains unsolved. For more than 2,000 years, the grave at Hort den Grimo kept its silence, leaving future generations with an unforgettable image: a young woman and a mule lying side by side beneath the earth, as though they once shared a bond that history never had the chance to record. It just goes to show that the ancient world is still filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered, doesn't it? Ancient tomb and a temple of Hercules in Rome. Bring a lost world back to life. There are some archaeological excavations where, from the very first shovel strike, researchers know they are about to uncover something extraordinary. But there are also sites where the deeper they dig, the more the past reveals secrets beyond anyone's expectations. A perfect example of this is a recent excavation on the eastern outskirts of Rome, Italy. During the excavation, archaeologists initially hoped to uncover only a few additional traces of ancient Roman civilization. However, as layer after layer of soil was carefully removed, an enormous architectural complex gradually emerged, leaving everyone at the site astonished. Believe it or not, within an area covering approximately 6.2 acres, archaeologists uncovered an impressive collection of ancient structures standing side by side. There was a temple, several ancient tombs, water reservoirs, and even a road that had once been bustling with activity more than 2,000 years ago. This meant that the site was not an isolated structure, but had once served as an important residential and religious center for the people of ancient Rome. Through extensive research, experts determined that the area had been inhabited as early as the 5th or 4th century BC. It continued to be occupied through the 1st century AD, with evidence showing that parts of the site were reused again during the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. In other words, this land witnessed centuries of history unfold, from the era of the Roman Republic through the later periods of the Roman Empire. Yet among all these remarkable discoveries, one structure captured the attention of archaeologists more than any other. It was the remains of an ancient temple. The temple itself was relatively modest in size, measuring only about 15 feet on each side, and it stood directly beside an ancient roadway. However, its location suggests that countless people once passed by it, indicating that it may have played an important role in the religious life of the local community. The discoveries did not stop there. As archaeologists excavated deeper, they found a small block of volcanic stone coated with white lime positioned directly in the center of the temple, perfectly aligned with its entrance. According to their initial assessment, this stone most likely served as an altar where religious ceremonies and sacrificial rituals were performed. Just behind the temple, they also uncovered the base of what had once supported a large statue that has long since disappeared. This finding further strengthened the theory that the structure had been a complete temple rather than an ordinary public or residential building. What excited researchers even more was the remarkable collection of artifacts discovered around the temple. Among the finds were small terracotta figurines depicting women, 2 terracotta bull statues, and numerous ancient bronze coins. These coins proved especially valuable because they allowed experts to date the construction of the temple to sometime between the late 3rd century BC and the 2nd century BC. Based on the architectural remains and the artifacts recovered from the site, archaeologists believe the temple was most likely dedicated to Hercules, the legendary demigod of Greek and Roman mythology, celebrated for his extraordinary strength and heroic feats. But the site's secrets did not end there. Not far from the temple, archaeologists uncovered 2 ancient tombs dating back to the 4th or 3rd century BC. Inside the tombs, they found numerous grave goods buried alongside the deceased, suggesting that the ancient Romans placed great importance on funeral rituals and their belief in the afterlife. The discoveries continued. The research team also uncovered two ancient water reservoirs dating to around the 2nd century BC. Even today, experts cannot say with certainty what these reservoirs were used for. Some believe they played a role in religious ceremonies, while others suggest they were used for industrial activities or the everyday needs of the local population. So, what do you think is the most convincing explanation? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. 2,000-year-old Triumphal Gate emerges from the ground in Turkey. During a recent archaeological excavation at the ancient city of Anavarza, also known as Anazarbis, in Adana province in southern Turkey, a team of experts from Çukurova University made a discovery that exceeded all expectations. Why was it so unexpected? Because at first, the archaeologists were simply hoping to uncover additional traces of an ancient Roman city. But as they dug deeper, the ruins of a massive structure gradually emerged before their eyes, a monument that had once stood as a symbol of the power of the Roman Empire. The first things to appear beneath the soil were enormous stone blocks arranged with remarkable precision. Then came towering columns, sections of walls, and intricately carved architectural details, one after another. Before long, the experts reached a conclusion that astonished the archaeological community. These were the remains of a monumental Roman triumphal arch dating back approximately 2,000 years. 2 millennia ago, this was the gateway through which countless victorious armies marched. It was a place where citizens gathered to witness grand ceremonies celebrating one of the most powerful empires in human history. According to archaeologist Fatih Gülsen of Çukurova University, the structure measured approximately 74 feet in length and stood roughly 34 feet tall. At that scale, simply standing before the gate would have been enough to make anyone in the ancient world feel small in the presence of Rome's immense power and grandeur. But what impressed researchers most was not just its size. As they continued cleaning the surviving architectural elements, they discovered that the gate had been decorated with extraordinary care and craftsmanship. The famous Corinthian-style capitals still preserved many of their delicate carvings. Between them stood massive columns, rectangular wall piers, and symmetrically designed niches, creating a structure that was both majestic and artistically sophisticated. Every detail reflects the masterful architectural skill of the ancient Romans. Using nothing more than stone and handcrafted construction techniques, they created a monument capable of surviving for thousands of years, despite wars, earthquakes, and the relentless passage of time. According to experts, this triumphal arch was far more than a simple entrance to the city. It was built to commemorate the Roman Empire's victory over the Persians, serving as a lasting symbol of Rome's military strength and political authority during the height of its power. Have you noticed something remarkable? The Romans didn't preserve their victories only in history books. They transformed those triumphs into monumental structures so that every future generation would look upon them with admiration. Even more remarkable, according to Fatih Gülsen, this is currently the only ancient city gate of this scale known anywhere in the Çukurova region today. Not only that, but it is also considered one of the very few surviving Roman triumphal arches still standing within the territory of modern-day Turkey. For that reason, this discovery is significant not only for Turkey, but also as an important piece of the puzzle that helps historians better understand the presence and influence of the Roman Empire in Asia Minor more than 2,000 years ago. And perhaps the most fascinating part is this. For thousands of years, countless people walked across this land without ever realizing that beneath their feet lay a gateway that had once witnessed victorious armies, magnificent public celebrations, and one of the greatest eras in history. Now that this ancient gate has finally returned to the light, it tells us more than the story of a long-forgotten military victory. It reminds us that beneath every layer of ordinary-looking earth, history continues to hide secrets powerful enough to astonish the entire world. The mysterious 30,000-year-old furry ball discovered in a Canadian gold mine. If someone handed you a small brown furry ball that had just been dug out of the ground and told you it had been lying there for more than 30,000 years, you'd probably assume it was nothing more than a dirt-covered rock or a clump of dried roots, wouldn't you? But sometimes nature hides its greatest wonders in ways no one could ever imagine. And the story from the frozen wilderness of Yukon, Canada, is one of the best examples. Back in 2018, while mining for gold in the Klondike goldfields near the city of Dawson in Yukon, a miner unexpectedly came across a small, round object completely covered in fur. At first glance, it didn't seem unusual at all. In fact, many people assumed it was simply a frozen clump of soil tangled with plant roots. However, when the specimen was sent to experts at the Yukon Beringia Interpretive Center for examination, everyone was astonished. It wasn't a rock. It wasn't a fossilized plant. Instead, it turned out to be the remarkably well-preserved mummy of a juvenile Arctic ground squirrel that had remained buried in the region's permafrost for more than 30,000 years. Just imagine that. While humans were still living during the Ice Age, when woolly mammoths roamed the frozen grasslands, this tiny creature had already begun its final sleep. And amazingly, after tens of thousands of years, its fur, ears, tiny tail, and delicate claws were still preserved in almost perfect condition. Isn't that an incredible discovery? Paleontologist Grant Zazula explained that, at first, he couldn't even recognize the specimen as a squirrel. It wasn't until he carefully examined its tiny feet, claws, tail, and perfectly preserved ears that he was able to identify the animal. The specimen was then sent to veterinarian Jess Heath for x-rays and a detailed examination. The results revealed a surprisingly touching story. It was a very young Arctic ground squirrel curled up in the position it would normally assume during hibernation. Experts believe it most likely crawled into its burrow to survive the harsh winter, but an unexpected heavy snowfall collapsed and buried the burrow, preventing the young squirrel from ever waking up. Ironically, that tragedy created the perfect natural time capsule. Because the squirrel remained trapped within Yukon's permanently frozen ground, its body was preserved as though it had been stored inside a gigantic natural freezer. Its skin, fur, and even the smallest facial features remained almost completely intact, with virtually no decomposition. According to Jess Heath, if you simply looked at it with the naked eye, the specimen resembled nothing more than a small brown ball of fur, perhaps even a rock. That's why she was especially impressed that the miner realized it might be something far more significant than an ordinary object. What's fascinating is that Arctic ground squirrels still live throughout Yukon today. They routinely dig underground burrows for hibernation, and scientists frequently discover nests dating back to the Ice Age. However, finding an entire individual preserved this completely is extraordinarily rare. For Grant Zazula, who has spent much of his career studying fossilized skeletons, this discovery was even more valuable than enormous mammoth tusks or other giant Ice Age skeletons. For the first time, he was able to observe the complete face, skin, and fur of an animal that had lived more than 30,000 years ago. Today, the Yukon Beringia Interpretive Center has released photographs and X-ray images of the specimen and plans to place this extraordinary mummy on public display. Once again, the discovery reminds us that beneath the frozen ground of the Klondike still lie countless Ice Age secrets waiting to be uncovered. And those were 10 recent archaeological discoveries that have prompted scientists to rethink many things once believed to be firmly established in history. Every excavation brings more than just ancient artifacts or human remains. It opens the door to new questions about humanity's origins, lost civilizations, and the lives of people who came before us. Who knows? Even at this very moment, beneath layers of seemingly ordinary earth and rock, countless secrets may still be waiting to be uncovered. If you enjoy mysterious stories from the ancient world, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Ancient History channel, and share this video so you can join us on our journey to uncover the mysteries of humanity's forgotten past. Until next time, thank you for watching. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next video.